Hello children and welcome to the session today. Children, in the previous session, we learnt about crop production. We learned about the organisms that affect crops. You remember we took the name of fungus in that chapter. Now fungus is a very tiny organism. It cannot be seen with naked eye, not until it reaches a stage where it is seen as a green coloration. So children, in this chapter today, chapter number 2, microorganisms, we are going to talk about organisms that are micro. Micro means very small. So these very small organisms cannot be seen with the help of a naked eye. What do we need? We need a microscope to observe them. Now children, these microorganisms play a major role in maintaining the ecosystem and the balance in the ecosystem. These microorganisms are classified into 5 major groups. There is bacteria, protozoa, algae, fungi and viruses. Now children, all these organisms, microorganisms, they are both useful and they are harmful also. Before we understand how they affect human life, let us understand each of these in detail. Studying about bacteria first. Now, bacteria are all unicellular organisms. Unicellular means a single cell performs all the functions. Now, these mostly resemble plant and animal cell, but they lack a cell wall. Now, these can be rod-shaped, which are known as bacillus. These can be spherical-shaped, known as coccus, and they can be spiral-shaped, known as spirillum. Bacteria usually divide by division, and the process is known as binary fission, breaking into 2. On an average, bacteria multiplies at an average rate of 1 division per 10 minutes, which is a slow speed of division. Children, we have to remember that in order for microorganisms to reproduce, the conditions have to be warm. There has to be a little amount of moisture. In case it is very hot or it is very cold, it is difficult for them to survive. But there are microorganisms that survive very cold also and they survive very hot also. How? We will learn further. The second category is protozoa. Now, protozoa again are unicellular organism, but unlike bacteria, they have got a true nucleus and other cell organelles. Now, these protozoa, like other microorganisms, they can be useful also, they can be harmful also. Algae are found mostly in water. Some algae are capable of doing photosynthesis and preparing their own food. Now, the problem is that algae grow very fast and they cover the whole water body. So, what happens? They are obstructing the oxygen supply to the other plants and animals inside the water. Now children, algae are not considered to be as harmful, but these water bodies become unfit. Microorganisms are found everywhere, in the air, water, human body, food, etc. Microorganisms are very tiny living things that can only be seen under a microscope. Scientists who study microorganisms are called microbiologists. Anton van Leeuwenhoek was the first scientist to describe microorganisms. Take some pond water in a beaker, filter it through a filter paper. You will find some soil and small organisms sitting on the cloth. Put a drop of the filtered water on a clean glass slide with the help of a dropper. Observe the slide under a microscope. You will see many minute organisms floating in the water. Now let's go on to the next microorganism, which is known as fungi. They are also plant-like because they have chlorophyll and they have a cell wall that is made up of chitin. Now, these can be unicellular also, that means single cell like yeast, and they can be multicellular also like mushrooms. So we have seen mushrooms of all sizes growing everywhere, and yeast is very, very tiny. Now talking about viruses. COVID has taught us a lot about viruses. Now the first thing to understand about virus is that it is a connecting link between living and non-living. It lives on the borderline of living and non-living. Why? Because in order to live, a virus needs a host. Outside the host body, a virus is dead. It behaves like it is non-living. But inside the host, it multiplies very fast, and viruses also spread very fast. I don't think I need to elaborate on this particular microorganism here. Now children, these microorganisms can be beneficial and they can be harmful also. But before that, let's move back and understand how these microorganisms survive in these conditions. These microorganisms form a cyst-like thing around themselves. Because of this, when it is very hot or it is very cold, the microorganism survives inside the cyst, and once the conditions are favorable, the cyst breaks open and the microorganism is released. To understand the beneficial effects of microorganisms, let's watch a video. Microorganisms are useful to us in many ways. Bacteria help us in the formation of curd from milk. Take 3 cups of milk, label them as A, B and C. Put cold milk in cup A, lukewarm milk in cup B and hot milk in cup C. Put a spoonful of curd in all the 3 cups. Stir well and leave them undisturbed for 5 to 6 hours. You will observe that curd is formed only in cup B that contained lukewarm milk. As the bacteria multiplied and produced acids, the milk curdled and thickened to form curd. No curd was formed in cups A and C because bacteria are inactive in cold milk and hot milk. The bacteria responsible for curdling of milk is called lactobacillus. Yeast is used in the baking industries for making breads, cakes, etc. Take a cup of flour and add 2 tablespoons of sugar and mix it well with warm water. Add a tablespoon of yeast powder and knead it to make a soft dough. Leave this dough in a container for 2 to 3 hours. You will observe that the volume of the dough increases. This happens because the yeast cells feed on the sugar in the dough mixture and break the sugar to produce carbon dioxide gas and alcohol. The bubbles of carbon dioxide gas fill the dough, thereby increasing its volume. So in this video, we have understood how these microorganisms help us in making of curd, in baking bread, and in rising of dhokla, idli and dosa batter, and in processing of cheese. So these are all the uses of microorganisms. Coming next to a very important factor where microorganisms are used, they are used in the production of antibiotics. Antibiotics are used to fight against different microorganisms, but the fact is that they are extracted from bacteria and fungi. Similarly, vaccines. Now, vaccines are a very, very tiny dose of the same organism. So, in COVID-19, you were being given the vaccine which contained the coronavirus in a very, very light form. So, the moment that vaccine entered your body, the body began to produce antigens. These antigens are like the fighter cells of your body. So once these fighter cells are created in a large number in the body, when the real microorganism enters the body, they are able to fight back. Bacteria also function to clean up the environment by decomposing dead and decaying matter. Now, Other than the benefits of microorganisms, they also cause diseases in animals and human beings. Certain microorganisms are transmitted from vectors like flies and mosquitoes. As we can see here, the table shows us the different types of diseases and how they are spread. All these diseases that you see on the table right now here, these are spread by microorganisms. So these include cholera, dysentery, typhoid, hepatitis, malaria, chikungunya, dengue, cold and flu, tuberculosis, chickenpox, measles, polio, mumps, flu, common cold, ringworm, chickenpox, tetanus, anthrax, and of course, we have COVID-19 added to the list. Now, children, the mode of transmission is also given. So, we understand that in case of human beings, there are certain precautions that we must take. Now, these diseases that we are talking about, some of them are communicable. Again, taking the example of COVID-19. So, what were the precautions that you were given? You were asked to cover your face, wearing a mask, so that whenever we are talking, if there is an infected person, the spit or the air coming out of the mouth does not carry the same germs. Second, maintain distance. This was to stop the spread of the virus. The third one was avoiding contact with the infected person. So here, how were we avoiding contact? We were avoiding contact by isolating the patient. Now, this was about diseases in human beings. Let's come to diseases in plants. So, in plants also, many microorganisms are responsible for many kinds of diseases. As we can see here in this table, bacteria, fungi, virus, all three are responsible for causing these different types of diseases like the citrus canker, white rust of mustard, red rot of sugarcane, rust of wheat, leaf curl of papaya and chilies, leaf mosaic of tobacco, and yellow vein of okra. So, in order to stop the spread of diseases, we learnt in the first chapter that we use chemical sprays. Even in case of stored food, these viruses can attack, as we learned in storage of food grains, that if we eliminate moisture, if we eliminate the already present spores of microorganisms, then the stored grains will last longer. However, at homes, we undertake preservation of food. What is preservation of food? Preservation of food helps to destroy the microorganisms in food. There are two major ways in which we can do it. First is heating. So, when you boil food or when you cook food, you destroy these microorganisms. The second is either increasing the sugar, as in case of jams, or increasing the salt, as in case of pickle. And these foods can then be canned. So, children, in this chapter, we have learned at length about the different groups of microorganisms. We have also learned how these microorganisms are beneficial and how they are harmful. And we have also learned how preservation of food is a possibility at home. So, I hope you're ready to attempt the questions at the back. Thank you so much.